Hey everybody, prepare to be amazed. From groundbreaking designs that defy traditional norms to technological advancements pushing the boundaries of flight, here are the top 15 most innovative aircraft ever created. Number 15. Air taxis. In the future, there is hope that air taxis can help ease congestion in urban areas, and to date, the Airbus City Airbus Next Gen may just be our best shot at making this dream a reality. Unveiled in March of 2024, it's powered by 8 propellers and 16 electrical units. When in flight, it can carry up to 1 pilot and 3 passengers for a distance of 80 kilometers and at a cruising speed of 120 kph. Best of all, it doesn't need much room to take off or land, making it perfect for urban use. Maybe I'll get one in my backyard. Number 14. The B-21 Raider. So for the past 25 years, America has relied on the B-2 Spirit for bombing missions, and this has given China and Russia enough time to build competitors. In response, the US has recently debuted the B-21 Raider. Designed to fly multiple sorties each day, it's got super slender air intakes and is still top secret. Number 13. The Boeing MQ-28 Ghost Bat. That's a good name. Well, in recent years, drones have become widespread in global conflicts, and while there are plenty of them out there, one of the most innovative is undoubtedly the Boeing MQ-28 Ghost Bat. Built in Australia, this unmanned combat drone makes full use of AI, and it's able to communicate with America's new 6th-generation fighters and bombers. It's got a range of more than 3,200 kilometers, a combat radius of 1,400 kilometers, and it's got an integrated intelligence, surveillance, target acquisition, and reconnaissance suite. Best of all, some reports state that it can even operate in space. However, to date, many of the details aren't public information. Number 12. The X-37B Orbital Test Vehicle. So of all the entries on this list, Number 11. The Challenger 3500. In the world of private jets, the Bombardier Challenger 3500 is the most innovative thing available. Considered to be the first super mid-sized aircraft with an environmental product declaration, its flight test program was the first in business aviation to be completely carbon neutral. It also has an eco-friendly interior and sustainable aviation fuel, well, in other words, a novel blend of conventional jet fuel and synthesized blended agents from liquids such as cooking oils, plant oils, and wood waste. And while this plane may not be perfect, it certainly is an innovative step in the right direction. However, at a cost of $27 million a pop, only the ultra-wealthy can afford this thing. Number 10. The DJI Mavic 3 Pro. So while most of the aircraft on this list are far out of reach of the average consumer, the DJI Mavic 3 Pro is great if you want something that's on the cutting edge of consumer-class drone operation. Most drone owners want a top-tier camera. In this area, the Mavic 3 Pro doesn't easily recognize potential problems, such as small tree branches and wires. The drone also has an advanced pilot assist system. This system essentially allows the drone to fly around obstacles by itself. And while it's not perfect, after all, it occasionally pauses in place in front of large buildings. It more or less works as advertised. Now, this isn't to say that there aren't any problems. After all, its base model has just 8 gigabytes of storage, and its battery life of 43 minutes is not only relatively low, but according to some reports, only achievable in perfect weather. The drone is also heavy enough to require FAA registration. While it only costs $5 every year, that's a bit of an annoyance to file. After all, at a price of $2,200 a pop, it certainly is an investment. Yet if you want the best of the best in terms of retail drone tech, then this one's hard to beat. Number 9. The HY-4. So in recent years, there's been a push to create planes that are more sustainable, and the HY-4 is one of the more innovative options. This setup manages to get the aircraft to a cruising speed of 145 kph and a max speed of about 200 kph. It can maintain its cruising speed for some time. While its range varies depending on the speed, load, and latitude, it generally falls somewhere between 750 and 1,500 kilometers. Now, one notable thing about this aircraft is it's incredibly eco-friendly. The hydrogen fuel cell is stored at pressure between 4,300 and 5,800 psi in 2 carbon fiber tanks. The fuel cells convert hydrogen directly into electrical energy, and the only waste product from the process being water. Well, the aircraft can therefore fly emissions-free so long as the hydrogen for the fuel cell is properly produced. That is, through electrolysis powered by renewable energy sources. According to H2Fly co-founder Joseph Callow, quote, "We're now looking ahead to scaling up our technology for regional aircraft and other applications, beginning the critical mission of decarbonizing commercial aviation," end quote. While this will be possible with more investment, thankfully, H2Fly already has new things. The thing is that the F-35 Lightning II is the most powerful to ever be built. While it's an integral part of America's stealth aircraft fleet, these jets are made by Lockheed Martin and serve the air forces of the United States, Canada, Australia, and many European countries. They're able to reach speeds of up to Mach 1.6 and fly for distances of up to 2,800 kilometers. The F-35 is one of the fastest jets out there, and it's exceptionally difficult to detect, and it's so stealthy that its radar cross-section is the approximate size of a golf ball. Now, on board, the F-35's armaments are minimal but capable. Generally speaking, these planes have one 25mm gun and a combination of between 4 to 10 missiles. Now, from a numbers perspective, this may seem pretty small. However, this amount of armament is perfect because the F-35 is designed to be a discreet fighter. For example, one of its more important roles in the U.S. Air Force is to conduct reconnaissance and then forward the information to the U.S. Army and Navy vehicles, allowing them to effectively fight Islamist militants in the Egyptian Sinai and Hamas arms smugglers in the Sudan. Most recently, they've also seen use in the Israel-Palestine conflict and during Israel's offensive airstrikes on Yemen. So, while the F-35s are mainly used for deterrence, Israel has shown they can have a real impact in battle. Moving on to number 7, the cooking oil airplane. So the Airbus A380 is one of the world's largest commercial planes in use. After all, it is still used extensively by luxury airlines such as the Emirates, Etihad, and British Airways. Yet despite its large size and penchant for luxury, this plane also is quite green. This was proven in March of 2024 when one of these massive planes was run entirely on 100% sustainable aviation fuel. Made using just cooking oil, the airplane managed to fly from London's Heathrow to New York's JFK on a project called Flight 100. They then followed this up on March 29 with a flight from Toulouse to Nice, land from being used for food crops. This in turn may lead to the destruction of forests and peatlands to create these SAFs. The loss of the trees and plants that absorb carbon would therefore increase the carbon footprint and in many ways neutralize the positive impact of SAFs. As a result, SAFs cannot be the only answer. While we certainly need to move towards creating planes with electricity and hydrogen and must work to encourage rail over air travel, SAFs can be part of the solution. But by making fossil fuel aircraft a bit greener, SAFs can in turn reduce their environmental impact, maybe helping ensure that the future is a bit brighter. Number 6. MIT's ionic wind aircraft. Since the first airplane took flight over 100 years ago, virtually every aircraft in the sky has flown with the help of moving parts, be they propellers, turning blades, or fans. These have been necessary to get the plane off the ground. However, in 2018, MIT did something incredible. They created it via a lightweight power converter. Once these wires are energized, they interact with the negative electrons in the surrounding air, sucking them in. This in turn makes the air positively charged, which in turn attracts the negatively charged electrodes at the back of the plane. This process causes clouds of ions to flow towards the back of the plane, and as these ions collide, this creates thrust. When tested, the MIT team flew the plane a distance of 60 meters, that is the maximum distance they could inside their indoor gym. The team found that the plane produced enough ionic thrust to sustain the flight the entire time. Then they repeated the flight 10 times with similar performance. As you might imagine, at least in theory, there are many benefits to an ionic wind craft. First and foremost, unlike turbine-powered planes, these aircraft don't depend on fossil fuels to fly, allowing them to have no carbon emission. And unlike propeller-driven drones, ionic wind aircraft are completely silent, ensuring that they don't create any noise pollution. Yet, the ionic wind technology still has a way to go. It had the potential to completely change aerial warfare. Absolutely massive in terms of size and scale, it was one of the vehicles created by the Soviets in an attempt to outdo America during the Cold War. And while their efforts ultimately failed, this vintage aircraft stands as an example of the Cold War spirit of innovation. Nicknamed the Caspian Sea Monster by American intelligence, the plane was developed between 1964 and 66. When American intelligence first detected the plane, they didn't exactly know what they were looking at. However, in time, they classified it as an chronoplan. In essence, an chronoplan is just a cross between a boat and a plane. In the case of the Corabelle maquette, it was designed to travel at high speeds just above the surface of the water, but below enemy radar. This is possible because these types of planes made use of something known as ground effect. Now, in essence, when the aircraft are within a certain distance from the ground, they experienced reduced drag because the airflow around the vehicle interacts with the surface below. It wasn't the only chronoplan to be launched by the Soviet Union. That's because in 1987 they launched the Lund-class chronoplan. While meant to be an upgrade to the Korabel Maquette, it faced many of the same setbacks. Due to the fact that it could only fly at low altitude, couldn't function unless the ocean was absolutely calm, this greatly reduced the number of places where it could be deployed. The decision was ultimately made to build just one of these unusual yet innovative chronoplans. Number 4. Solar-powered planes. As of now, planes take up a lot of energy. Even a simple flight from New York to London would, on a Boeing 747, take up to 136,000 liters of fuel. For reference, that's enough to power more than 40 cars for an entire year. Well, this has led to a real push to build solar-powered planes. On a smaller scale, these efforts have sometimes worked. One notable example is the Solar Impulse 2, created and led by Swiss engineer and businessman André Borschberg and Swiss psychiatrist and balloonist Bertrand Piccard. This in turn gave it the record for being the first piloted solar craft to make it around the world. The Impulse 1 and 2 are not the only solar-powered planes out there. That's because there is also many non-piloted solar craft. One of the most famous is undoubtedly the AeroVironment Helios. Built under a NASA program, it managed to reach an altitude of nearly 30,000 meters, giving it the world record for having the longest sustained horizontal flight by a winged aircraft. However, on June 26 of 2003, tragedy struck after a technology-related accident happened, causing Helios to break up and fall into the Pacific, about 16 kilometers west of Hawaii. Now, while all these solar aircrafts have served as great templates, the million-dollar question is whether or not these small-scale projects can be transferred to the commercial level. The unfortunate answer, in brief, is probably not. According to Associate Professor Rhett Elaine of Southeastern Louisiana University, in order to get a larger passenger plane up in the sky with solar power, you need a ton of energy. Using a Boeing 737 as an example, balloons. Now, for most people, space travel is gonna be far out of reach. After all, if current costs are any indicator, only the ultra-wealthy will be able to make the trip. Back in 2022, SpaceX sent an all-private crew to the ISS for a week at a cost of $55 million per person. Meanwhile, in 2027, the first-ever space hotel is set to open, with a cost of about $5 million for a 3-day stay. Yet for those who want to reach the edge of space but don't need to be up close and personal with it, there may be a more economical option: space balloons. And as of now, there are 2 main competitors in the market. The first is Zefalto's Celeste balloon. Headed by a French aeronautical engineer in partnership with France's version of NASA, the idea behind it is to bring people close to space without emitting a lot of carbon. The altitude the balloon will reach is 25 kilometers, according to Vincent. This is because it's at this altitude where you're in the darkness of space. With $98,000 per person, it's way cheaper than taking an actual spaceship, and as of now, the company hopes to fly in 2025. And Zefalto isn't the only player in the space balloon game. That's because there's another major competitor, Space Perspective, and their spaceship Neptune balloon. Its tickets come in at around $125,000 a pop, and for that price you get access to Wi-Fi, a world-class culinary program, plush safety seating, luxury amenities, and panoramic views through the largest windows ever to be flown to space. Well, unlike the Zefalto, the spaceship Neptune gets you a tad higher, reaching an altitude of about 30 kilometers, and as an added twist, space flights start and end on the Marine Spaceport Voyager, which is the world's first and only marine spaceport for human spaceflight. Now, if these 2 space balloon companies are successful, we'll likely see continued innovation in this field. It's because of this that, on my end, I wish them the best. Number 2. The Avro Arrow. While the Avro Arrow may not be the most high-tech aircraft by today's standards, Arrow could take off, fly through the Arctic tundra at speed, get within range of Soviet bombers, shoot missiles at them, and fly back. Now, while there are many aircraft that can do this today, at the time it was considered to be one of, if not the most advanced aircraft on the planet. Many features played into gaining its title. For example, its delta wings offered much more internal room and overall surface area, which in turn gave the jet more onboard fuel and a very strong lift. Another feature was its top-of-the-line internal components. Now, these helped it fly incredibly fast. Reportedly, it maxed out at a speed of about Mach 2. For reference, this was the maximum speed of the famous Concorde jet, and according to some experts, there's a strong chance that the Avro Arrow could have been made to fly even faster. However, in a shocking move on February 20th of 1959, Canadian Prime Minister John Diefenbaker made the controversial decision to cancel the program. This not only put about 15,000 people out of a job, but marked a steep decline in Canadian aviation industries. After all, the development of advanced fighters all but ended after the best idea, as it turns out that they weren't to become as obsolete as imagined at the time. However, hindsight is 20/20, and in our timeline, Canada instead decided to purchase a series of inferior American products, such as the McDonnell F-101 Voodoo interceptors and Beaumark B missiles. Number 1. Flying cars. Now, while flying cars may sound like something out of a sci-fi movie, there have been in fact efforts to build them for far longer than you may think. While there were several early attempts, the first by a major automaker was conducted by none other than Henry Ford, known as the Ford Flyver. The hope was that the 1927 model would be the Model T of the air. However, this was not to be. After a prototype crashed into the ocean off the coast of eastern Florida, production plans were halted. Not deterred, other auto manufacturers got to work making their own, more functional versions. The first to see success was the Autogyro Company of America's AC-35. This essentially was a gyrocopter